Yeah, I just wanted to kind of share another anecdote of how I've kind of adjusted my own collection over time. And like I said, just like Pirate Smalls kind of suggested, as he was moving, or they were moving, and looking back on their own collection, and sort of saying like, man, what have I, Anakin
What have I
Skywalker, what have I
done?
done?
You have a bunch of decapitated minifigures or something? I collect
No,
headless
I just,
minifigures and I display them in my
yeah.
house. And wait, what? Hello, bricks, chicks, and minifigures. You are listening to AFOLs Welcome, where we talk about all things LEGO from the perspective of two adult collectors. We are your co-host. I'm Grinch.
I'm West.
And today we will be talking about how to curate your LEGO collection. This is a follow up episode to what we talked about last week, where we talked about collection fatigue. And I just wanted to get a quick PSA out of the way. We will be talking actually about how to display your LEGO collection here. In the coming month or so, it's not going to be right immediately after this episode, but um, just need a little bit more time to get settled and unpacked before we tackle that beast. But that will be kind of the third and final part to put the bow on this conversation. But with that out of the way, let's move over to some exciting LEGO news.
Exciting LEGO news.
West, what do you have for us?
Oh, well, I think it's the news that we were all excited about this week. It's been teased for a little bit. We've talked about it on the episode a little bit, but the new Jurassic World sets were revealed this week. So that's really exciting. Grinch, anything in particular that you saw that stood out to you?
I can't tell if you're trolling or not, but I love it. Um, Lord of the what? No, but yeah, actually,
Jurassic Rings.
Lord of the Jurassic
The
Rings. Is that going to be the new one?
Baradorosaurus. It's the Baradorosaurus.
Look, all I'm saying is the most popular video I've ever made on YouTube was about the top 5 missing dinosaurs. And in that
Mm,
video, I said we needed a Brachiosaurus number 1, and I'm forgetting my own order, but I believe number 4 was a Stegosaurus. And we're getting a Stegosaurus. Woohoo! And I did a follow-up video to that, and we're gonna get an and in that video I said we needed an Allosaurus. And guess what else we're getting? An Allosaurus. So that's pretty cool. There's actually 3 Jurassic World sets revealed. The Stegosaurus, I think it was like Discovery Dinosaur Mission Stegosaurus Discovery.
yeah.
Interesting
And
name.
then the bumpy Ankylosaurus.
And then yeah. So then there was the Dinosaur Mission Allosaurus Transport, and then the Bumpy
Yeah.
and I don't know. Bumpy. This my worry. I don't remember if we were talking about it on the podcast or if we were talking about it offline. But my worry with the Bumpy was the piece count, because the leak said a buildable Bumpy, and it was
Hmm.
only 358 pieces, and I just didn't know how they were going to do that in enough detail. And it's okay. Uh,
Yeah.
I love Bumpy from the Camp Cretaceous show. Great
Camp,
character.
Camp Crustacean.
Camp Crustaceans. That's the adult follow-on show. But no, but it feels like a 358 piece polybag in a way. It just doesn't feel detailed enough for me. But it looks fine, for what it is. But this is where I collect it, which we'll talk about in our curating our collection. But I hope that
Yeah.
nobody else collects it so that they don't make any more of them, because I'm a completionist collector. But what do you think about these, West?
Well, first off, so obviously we're being a little facetious here and silly. We're going to talk about Barador next, but yes, we did get the 3 Jurassic World sets revealed for their summer wave. I mean, I think they look fun. They're certainly interesting sets. You know, we haven't really talked about this in the Jurassic World sets, but I've always appreciated those Lego sets for what they do with vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Their builds are always really good, comparatively speaking, even to like the city line. But looking at these vehicles now compared to the ones that have come out in this city's line, I'm a little, I wouldn't say torn, but like the truck from the Allosaurus looks great. But when you compare that to the yellow truck that's coming out for the city, like the Lego set, the city transport truck or the Lego transport truck, I just have to give it to that transport truck. Although, and this was something that another YouTuber had mentioned. He said something to the effect of, "It's really cool that in both of these sets, the Lego's committing on a 6 wide format of putting the characters side by side, like building it in so two people can sit in the same truck." And yeah, I 100% agree. I'm surprised that that type of build has taken as long as it has to, like Lego to kind of commit to building in two people side by side on a 6 wide platform. It's
Sure.
very doable. It just takes a little effort, and so it's cool to see what Lego's doing with some of the builds on the side. The dinosaurs look great. I'm a little disappointed because in both of these cases, while the Allosaurus wasn't featured in Lost World, this was an opportunity. I mean, the Stegosaurus was that could have been a great Lost World set,
Yeah.
and then we could have gotten just some really interesting minifigures that we haven't gotten before. An Ian Malcolm minifigure from the Lost World, his stepdaughter or daughter from that
Mm-hmm.
show, and then we could also have gotten a
Sarah
Julianne
Harding.
Moore,
Yeah.
yeah, minifigure that we've never had before. So I think that would be really cool. The truck itself in Lost World kind of had more of a T-Rex in it than it did in Allosaurus, but yeah, I don't know. Like I said,
Well,
just a
this
little bit of
is
a missed opportunity.
this is something that they've done a kind of a lot too within the Jurassic series of Lego
Hmm.
sets. Is just some sort of transport. I mean, they famously did it, um, or infamously did it, I should say, in the Jurassic World first movie sets. They had the T Rex transport, which appeared nowhere in the movie. They had another
Hmm.
one in the next one in the Fallen Kingdom sets, which did appear in the movie. I think they've done one more, and then they've done it in like the Dino lines. It's just like the recurring theme, so it's kind of dry at this point in my mind. But I'm just excited we're getting. I mean, usually you just get these for the dinosaurs anyway, so I'm
Yeah.
excited for the Allosaurus. I don't at me in the comments. We know it's not technically an accurate Allosaurus model, but what it is accurate to the movie. If anything, it's a little bit too big, but they've done a good job representing it here. Battle of the Big Rock, that short that they did and posted on YouTube. It's like 5-10 minutes. Check it out if you haven't. That features an Allosaurus terrorizing a campground, which is really, really cool.
Mm.
And one thing that I really do like about the Allosaurus set is they've continued with the. It looks like I don't have a high res picture in front of me, but it looks like the sign of the side of the semi has a U.S. Fish and Wildlife or U.S. Dinosaur sigil on it,
Oh,
which is really cool. I think for me, between this and the 4 Plus set that we got with Dominion that had the Park Ranger, the U.S. Wildlife Ranger, I think that's a perfect avenue to use this. And then I do believe that this is from the new Chaos Theory TV show. That'll be a follow up from Camp Cretaceous that looks pretty darn awesome as well. So we've got some of those reoccurring characters here too. So
it is
they
the
are they are doing it based off of that.
prehistoric wildlife uh, sticker.
Got it. Okay.
So it looks kind of like a park ranger
Right.
sticker,
Yeah.
but I suppose, yeah, kind of a follow on for what will eventually be the future of Lego Jurassic Park,
But
or Jurassic Park in general.
I think it's pretty cool. But
I do
yeah,
too.
they are a little lacking. It does make you want, especially the Stego Lost World sets. But I think the Allosaurus looks good. I like how they continued too with the theme of like not making the dinosaurs look perfect. The Allosaurus has some scars and details along his back, which
Yeah,
is just a kind of a nice little bit of a realism touch versus having just a pristine coat, skin coat, or
scales, fur,
hide.
hair, feathers.
feathers, dinosaur. Um, but the next piece, before we get into Barad-dûr, because I know we'll spend a little bit of time talking about that.
Well, and
Um,
I'd like to
yeah.
add, so like I know that it's a disappointment to not get Jurassic World sets, but what we do get in front of us does look really great. The colors on the vehicles are wonderful. The white and the green look really cool, and that with the blues from the dinosaur, I think it's like the color variation in the set is
Mm-hmm.
really great, and it stands out, and I think that looks really wonderful. I did actually want to talk about Lumpy a little bit.
Bumpy.
That the Bumpy,
How dare
Lumpy,
you?
Bumpy,
Lumpy has
whatever.
Lumpy is too soon. Too soon. That's all I'm gonna say.
Okay,
All right, please tell us
here's
about
where
your
I'll
dear
leave
friend
this.
Lumpy.
Here's where I'll leave the Bumpy, the baby Ankylosaurus,
Oh my
Ankylosaurus.
gosh. Jeez. What is it
I
on
know.
house arrest?
I know. Ankylosaurus.
Ankle
Um,
braceletosaurus?
yeah, exactly. No, it's a cute little model. I think it's really fun. Lego has been doing a lot of the animals recently with the Simbas, the two of them. They did the Lilo and Stitch model with Stitch, and then they did the cat one as well. And I think this is actually a nice continuation of that small animal building process. It looks really good, and I could totally see why people could enjoy this. And Lego, a baby dinosaur, buildable baby dinosaur line at the $25 to $30 price range, I bet would sell really well. Could you imagine building like a little baby T-Rex or like a little baby raptor or something, or even just take the dinosaur from the T-Rex escape set, the diorama, right? And do
Mm-hmm.
like buildable dinosaurs like that at that scale. I don't know. I think that could do really well.
It would be cool to get like
Um,
a, I don't know how they do this, but like an egg with like a baby velociraptor's like head kind of popping out of it from like the first one. Okay,
mm-hmm.
I'm gonna get
That
sidetracked, but
would
do
look
you
really
remember
cool.
when the Lost World came out in theaters and I think you got like the Pizza Hut toy and it was like that like baby stegosaurus like head sticking out of an egg and it was like a squirt gun and you'd like put it
Maybe.
underwater and like suppress it and then it would like as it expands it pulls up the water and you can
Yeah.
what a dumb toy. Like whoever thought of like a squirt gun baby stegosaurus stuck in an egg. What's
Can
having a
we
having a
also
bad
just
time.
acknowledge the just how dumb like toys and Happy Meals were?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And then
uh
we can leave that at that.
okay.
Actually, so I want to pause real quick and just kind of double down on what I'm saying. If you look at the new Creator 3-in-1 set from this year, the dinosaur one, right? They
Mm-hmm.
have like a T-Rex build that is more or less the T-Rex
I
from
saw
the
that, yeah.
T-Rex escape. And he looks great. There's some new variation on him that I think actually looks a little bit better with like the eyes and his feet almost. Well, I don't know. These are a little blockier than the ones from the other set, but I mean, it is a very similar model, and I don't know. I just think that that could be something that Lego could continue to explore, maybe with a little bit more detail than the Creator 3-in-1 series,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, I think there's a lot there. So we'll see if Bumpy or Lumpy or whoever he is sells well, and if Lego
Lumpy
decides
bump.
to continue that. I don't know if we need more Camp Camp Cretaceous sets.
Sound it out.
I think the series has not been as widely penetrated in the cultural zeitgeist or cultural Jurassic World zeitgeist as
I
the
think it
Netflix may
has.
have hoped.
I, I,
You think so?
I think it fell off a little bit because it got a little like the first two seasons were really good. The first season in particular, and then I think it kind of got a little off the deep end. But I mean, they tied it back to Dominion. But we've been on
I
we've been on Camp
let's
Cretaceous
let's
Jurassic Park for
yeah,
13 minutes
let's move
here.
on.
Last thing I want to say is the Stegosaurus. There is a little bit of a miss here. The tail should move. That's all I'll say on that.
Okay.
This next piece of news, we don't have a ton of information on, so I'll just give a quick reaction, West, if you want to as well. Lego Horizon Zero Dawn. Sounds like Sony and Lego are teaming up to produce a new video game.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what it turns into. I mean, if it's in the direction of Lego Fortnite, where it's kind of like the sub game of a game, I don't know. But if it's a full on Legoified Horizon Zero Dawn, I think that could be really cool. If it was maybe a little bit of Horizon mixed with a little bit of those old Telltale Lego games, might be kind of interesting. But we just don't have a ton of information other than there's been some leaks, some rumors, and I think even as far as a couple of kind of like subtle confirmations that there is something in the works from Sony and Lego in that department.
I mean, I think that would be a really interesting crossover. The Zero Dawn games, Horizon Zero Dawn games, they're an interesting mashup of kind of both a old and new world
Yeah,
combined in a way that is really kind of compelling and interesting. And I think uh, it's clearly why the game series has such a large fan following. And if that was recreated in Lego, I not only think that would look really great, but also I think that would be a really interesting way to look at that series. And I think it would almost take enough of the edge off the gameplay to make it. I never played the games, I did watch them. And so I'll leave us with this thought before we talk about the big news this week, which is I think Lego would be a really great medium for this. And I'll just
yeah.
kind of leave it at that.
I did play
So,
the game, and I'm certainly intrigued by what they could come up with. I mean, they could do a couple cool things. So,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
all right. And the last bit of news, in case you haven't heard, we got Lego Baradur finally announced. I know we've been waiting. I've been waiting ever since this was initially leaked in that survey back in the day. I couldn't believe it. But then we got Lego Rivendell, and I was like, okay, maybe this is going to happen. This was teased to us literally 20 minutes before we started recording our last episode last week, and now we got the official images. So, West, take it away. What do you think of Barad-dûr?
I think it looks great. And it's another fantastic entry into the Lego Lord of the Rings series. The sets have always been some of my favorite. The colors, the characters, the builds are always just Lego firing on all cylinders.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's an interesting design or choice, but it makes sense. And I think it's cool to have Rivendell and then have Barad-dûr as kind of like the two big placeholders in this series.
Sure.
I don't know, like if they were to explore sets in the future, what they could do, like
Minas Tirith.
realistically.
Minas Tirith. Minas Tirith.
Yeah, I think that would be really cool. I think like Rivendell, that would probably end up either being like only one portion of it, right?
Yeah.
Or you would have to basically create like a miniature. And either way, I think you couldn't go wrong with something like that. But we've talked about this in the past, and we're going to talk about it when we get into the theme reviews or the theme tier lists that we're going to do in a future episode. But spoiler, very strongly believe Lord of the Rings is one of the best, if not the best, themes that Lego makes. So it's really great to see it in this new entry into the series.
Mm-hmm.
For some of the criticisms of diehard fans who say that the rock striation in the middle of the build feels a little jarring. I don't know. I think it looks just fine. There's a lot of great color. We don't actually really see Barad-dûr in the movies up until the end where it collapses on itself. And so we certainly don't get any interior shots. I think it's really cool the way that Lego has sort of taken some creative licensing and liberty here to build an interior with the armory in the base. You've
Yeah.
got the
Sure.
chow hall or the kitchen with some fun little Easter eggs to include a sign that heavily implies that meat is back on the menu. which is funny,
I think
you have, yeah,
I
go ahead.
I think too, if for anybody who criticizes that rock, what do you call it?
A striation. I'm gonna,
Striation.
you keep talking. I'm gonna make sure that is the correct word.
Yeah, if anybody criticizes it, I think two things. It adds some important breakup of color that's accurate. It's not just to add color, but it helps kind of break up the base and the top of the tower. And if you look at the actual miniatures that were used in the filming of the movie, it is built into the rock like that, and there is that styration across the base of, at the top of the base to the base of the long part of the tower. That is there. It is accurate. I've seen a couple people maybe criticize some of the um, choice of brown pieces. I will also say that a lot of the tower, or not a lot of it, but part of the tower is brown. It just always looks so
Where,
dark in the movie.
yeah,
Um,
what's the criticism of the brown, like at the top
oh,
or
no, at the there at the
at the
base,
base?
there's like a part of the layer of it's brown, but if you actually, it is brown. In other subject materials outside of the movie too, you do see it as kind of this rusty, dark gray. And I just appreciate them going with a little bit of color just to add a little bit of pop to the display model, because I think the Tower of Orthanc is really good, but it is all black and it can be
Hmm.
hard to kind of differentiate some of that groove. So I don't mind the brown flare here at all. Um, I think maybe the criticism with the
Yeah,
rocks is the light gray. Maybe if it was all dark gray, it'd be a little bit less poppy. But overall, I really like this set, and I like that they put it at a base of lava, which from all the images I could see is correct. Because guess what? You can actually go to the WIDA page, the people who produced all the miniatures for this, and you can see kind of what they did. This is definitely supposed to be more of a movie version of it. But if you use the WIDA, the official WIDA workshop stuff material, they did a pretty
hmm.
darn good job here.
And I think you have to understand too, right? Like when we looked at the Rivendell set, it wasn't a perfect one-to-one, right? Like the
Mm-hmm.
roofing on the Rivendell set, like the blues and the oranges and stuff, wasn't necessarily something captured in Rivendell. But in the Lego format, it looked really pretty, and it I think it just adds to the set. And so I think here the brown is used as a contrasting color, like you said, not only to sort of suggest like a rust or a decay, but it also just gives a little bit of contrast to the black, allows us to see, it stands out, right? So the problem with building like black on black, like a monochrome, is that it's harder to see the details when they're on top of each other like that.
Sure.
And so I think the brown, definitely draws your eye to the brown at the base or that mid level, but then also just does a nice job of kind of breaking up the monotony. If you look at the top, right, you do see some really great color variation around the eye, suggesting using just bricks, built up brick, and the color variation from going light to dark, the eye is illuminated. And yes, they do include a light brick in the set, which I've seen on some video reviews of the set so far, and it doesn't really light it up super well. But I
Yeah.
think the color itself does enough here to suggest it being light, right? So you have these translucent pieces that are stacked on top of each other, and then they're using color variation too to suggest depth and various shades of orange and yellow, which gives it almost a three-dimensional like size and glow. And then you have
Right.
the color variation on the top too, which almost suggests like shadows and stuff. So I think it just, again, was a really well done set. And then the last thing I'll leave with kind of this discussion piece is striation is actually correct. It's a geological feature
Mm-hmm.
associated with fault
You're
lines
so
where
smart.
rocks change. So
So
yes, that was used correctly.
the one thing I was a little bit worried about the eye when I first saw the initial announcement, because like Lego hasn't really used that technique a lot for coloring like that, but I think at the end product looks super good. And then the last thing
Yeah.
I'll say with the color, the brown in that midsection, is that it is over a base of lava. So what that allows is you've got this kind of orangey
It
glow
almost
base,
suggests a
and
glow.
it's
Yeah.
suggesting the glow up from that too. Because like I said, this tower was black, but it was also built from kind of rusty metallic materials. So it's not brown in the traditional sense of being brown, but it's more of a glow, black glow of the lava below. And I like, when you look at it that way, it looks more like a masterpiece in my mind. I love it. I absolutely love it. Um,
And the tower is made from obsidian, if I remember correctly.
correct. Yeah.
Both the Barad-dûr and the Tower of
Or
Orthanc.
thank.
And so, an obsidian historically, right, is like this almost glassy looking
Mm-hmm.
rock. And so, not only does the glossy color of most of the black Lego pieces kind of add to that itself, but then, yeah, you get the different colors, which sort of suggest a glow from below, and I think that's really cool.
A glow
And I
from
know you said
below.
you were, yeah, exactly, a little worried about the eye and that technique, but I think Lego has been mastering over the years usage like plates and translucent plates for water since the first Ninjago city.
Mm-hmm.
And so they just do a really great job of using translucent pieces to maximize the effect or suggest, depth and three-dimensionality when there isn't any. And they're doing the same thing with the lava flow itself by using translucent yellows
Sure.
and translucent oranges and dark oranges even. But then on the eye itself too, they're using that to great effect as well. And yeah, it's a wonderful looking set. And I hear you about maybe feeling a little nervous, but I think they knocked it out
Oh,
of
I
the
think
park.
the end product looks good. It's just when we got the tease, we could only see that part,
Yeah.
and that was
Now I
like
will.
it was just cautiously optimistic.
Yeah. The only thing I'll say is it's expensive, and so was the
Rivendell.
Rivendell,
Yeah.
and it's a lot of money to spend on
But
Lego.
I think
You know.
Lego, if you think about Lord of the Rings, it came out in 2001, 2003, or 2002 and 2003, right? So the
Yeah.
people who, I mean, the movie came out 20 years ago, right? And if you saw it back then, you were probably at least, I mean, it was PG-13, so technically you were 13, but 10, 8 years old. I mean, you're in your late 20s, early 30s for sure, right? Mid 30s, late 30s. I mean, you're an adult is what I'm trying to say. So I think that's where Lego is. I would much rather get this than no Lord of the Rings sets, as somebody who collected all the Lord of the Rings set, got back into Lego because of them, and have been sitting with nothing. So it is expensive, but I think they're clearly going after an adult audience here. And
Yeah.
traditionally, without any Lord of the Rings material being released, culturally, right? It's not like we got a new movie. We got Ring of Power, it was received
Yeah.
so-so, that probably was the catalyst for a lot of this. But it's not like they have a main flagship movie coming out. I mean, I know one was just announced not too long ago, so it might be making a reappearance, and maybe that's when we get a new wave, is when that movie gets released. What do you think of the Fell
Yeah.
Beast gift with purchase? Oh wait, one more thing I want to say. I really like the inclusion of those helmets, those kind of orc helmet set that they have
Yeah.
in here, because in the extended, Sam and Frodo actually use those exact helmets to get through Mordor as
Yep.
orcs, and
The
just a
correct
great touch.
edition.
Yeah,
The correct edition of the movies,
yes, and anybody who says so is wrong. Otherwise is wrong.
or it says it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Agreed.
also just real quick, they are 100% referencing the movies here and not the books, because the books, the eye does not even exist. So anybody who says, "Oh, this isn't accurate to the book," well, it's not supposed to be. So just wanted to put that out
Yeah.
there. What do you think of the Felbeast gift with purchase?
I think it's fine.
Yeah, I do too. It can't be too special, right? I've seen a lot of people be like, "Well, why isn't this a Lego?" It's like it's really not that good of a set on its own. I think it's just a nice kind of addition. The set itself is, I mean, the exclusive thing is going to be the minifigure, which we already got better ring race in my mind, and the wings, right? So there's nothing super
Yeah.
special about it. I enjoy the fact that it's here. I like that there's a special gift with purchase for it, but if I weren't getting it, I wouldn't be like hugely missing out per se.
I mean, it looks great. Like, I think the one thing for me that I'm a little bummed about is the head.
Yeah,
I kind of wish
100%. It's a little simple.
Lego, I feel like they could have done, a whole different. They even had that old dragon head in green that was like the old school dragon that they could have just kind of done in black
Yeah,
for this type of set. You know what I mean? Like, I think that even would have looked, well, no, probably not.
it wouldn't have looked
But
accurate.
no, I mean, it's the fell beasts, their heads were kind of stumpy. So like,
Yeah.
I think that kind of tracks with the way the model looks. It's a nice set. I think it looks good when you look at this in comparison to what you're getting with Barad-dûr. It does sort of feel a little jarring, like some of the details aren't quite there. And
Yeah, it
so that would be maybe my only like major criticism.
this feels like a Comic-Con special edition set that was released in 2011 to announce Lord of the Rings as a theme. That's what it feels
Yeah,
like to me. Cuz it just the way the legs are built feel old. The way the body's put together with those mixel pieces feels old at this point. The wings feel
yeah,
lackluster. There's just a lot to be desired here. But I'm glad there's an exclusive gift with purchase, and I'm glad that it's not anything crazy special, so that people have like
yeah,
crazy bad FOMO. If anybody wants the set, I'm certainly not disappointed. I'm getting a special edition gift with purchase by any means when I get this day one. But it was anybody who can't get a day one, you're not missing out on. It's certainly better than the taxi they did with the Avengers Tower. I'll put it that way. But I'll also say, as far as like,
with Kevin Feige as a minifigure.
no, it wasn't. He was in the. It was.
Oh,
It
he was
just had the
actually in
same.
the
It just had
tower.
the same hat. Yeah,
Okay.
it just had the Black Panther and more Outriders. So
Interestingly enough, too, though, I will
yeah,
comment. We built one of these when we were kids before the movies and the Lego Lord of the Rings ever became a thing, right? Like we were using Hogwarts pieces
yeah,
and like Episode One pieces. He basically has like an old school Sith Jedi robe on,
yeah,
like the black robes,
yeah.
and like that's about it.
The
Which
Darth
was like
Maul
more or less
robe.
what we created in like
Right, right.
2002. So
I wish
I
it was the
I
Witch
stand
King.
by. Yeah, I stand by that. I'm not overly impressed with him, but I think it is a good. But I think that's good for the, like you said, for the exclusive like gift with purchase. That it's not like mind blowingly good, because at that point, then I think there'd be a lot of criticism. Like just turn this into a set.
Right,
So,
right.
but let's
Uh,
press on
all
to our
right,
main topic.
yeah.
Unless Grinch, do you have anything else or final thoughts for Barad-dûr and Felbeast?
Nope, we're gonna move on. I think this is a record for the least amount of news covered in the most amount of time on this podcast, probably. I think we only really talked about 4 Lego sets in total, but that's okay. We're excited about them. We hope you're excited about them too. I can put some time stamps in this episode and maybe going forward so that people can go to the main topic if they are already familiar with the news. But
Today's topic.
today we are going to be talking about curating a collection. So what is collection curation? I just got a definition from the internet so that we're all level set here. It's the action or process of selecting, organizing, and looking after the items in a collection or an exhibit. So you often hear about people being an art curator, for example, that are actually curating their art collection. And I think that that term has been started to use in Lego circles as people have started to display their models. It's become more of a art of collecting Lego, and it's definitely an appropriate term here for anybody that thinking like, oh, I don't curate my collection, I just put it on display. But that's why we're using that term. So I went and scoured the depths of the internet and to prepare for this episode, and I found a really good post 2 years ago from Lego Reddit, and I have not shared the post with West. I wanted to use it to kind of start the conversation it just felt like exactly what we were trying to capture in this episode. So this is from user Pirate Smalls. It was 2 years ago in the Lego subreddit, and its question is, it's a discussion post. It says how to curate your collection, how to manage storage/space. I am at a crossroads, currently moving, and the amount of Lego I've accumulated in the last 7 years has become apparent to me. No idea what you're talking about. What? I by no
That's
means.
that feels. I feel that.
So I didn't show this to Wes beforehand, but as you know, Wes is moving. I just moved, so yes, we're feeling that right now. I'm by no means leaving the hobby, but I am trying to figure out how to make it sustainable over my lifetime. I like how he said lifetime there. Like he's in this for the long haul.
He
While I will,
recognizes that.
yeah, no, I mean, you're an addict. It's all good. We are too. It's a safe place. While I will likely end up paring down a bit and getting rid of some stuff, my loose bulk and such, how does everyone manage this hobby? More in terms of space/storage than financial. I feel my options are 1. Pick a part of the hobby I want to focus on. Example, building sets versus mocks. 2. Only buy things that I absolutely want. How do I choose? 3. Get a buy/sell cycle going after I've built and enjoy a set for X amount of time. And he doesn't say this, but he was alluding to then sell it, then resell it so that you can fund more Legos and, just buy it, hold it for a couple of years. The used value at that point after it retires, a couple of years after it retires, is essentially, or should be somewhat close to the new value when it was released. So you just sell it and you just keep going. 4, sell anything not related to the themes I am collecting. What's everyone else doing? Thoughts? I've seen this. Seen things from minimizing collections all the way to Lego dedicated rooms, even garages or sheds. So that's where I wanted to start the conversation. Thank you, Pirate Smalls, for being a catalyst here to this hour conversation Wes and I are probably about to have. So that being said, Wes, what do you think of Pirate Small's post here on his questions about curating?
Yeah, well, I mean, as I already joked, I think it's definitely something that I'm familiar with right now, or feeling a little bit. And I think he brings up some really great questions. How do you handle all aspects of Lego collection? And I think the questions here he's asking are more or less the suggestions that I know that you and I would make, right? And so I think we can dive into that a little bit, but I think he's on the right track with how to answer this question. I mean, certainly I don't think either of us would suggest that we have the definitive answer on this. We have the answer that I think works well for us, and I know we're going to share that here shortly.
Yeah.
And it's something we constantly evaluate. So
Sure.
Pirate Smalls, P Smalls, I think you're
P
on the right
Smalls?
track. And I would, if you're a listener, which would be cool, if you want to come on the podcast and talk to us about how that has worked for you, we'd love to hear from you. So, or write in and let us know.
I'll comment after this episode's released. I'll comment on that thread and let them know about this. And it's P Smalls, not small P's.
Yes, clarify.
So yeah, he brought up a couple of points. He had those 4 points there. I'm not going to focus strictly on those 4 points, or I don't think we should. I think it was just a really good way to introduce the topic of other people that have felt this. We shared last time, where I said, my journey was I got out of my dark age, started collecting, maybe got a little too trigger happy in the sense, and had to kind of just take a step back for 6 months, reevaluate what I was doing, and then go back in more focused. And he did say, financially aside, we're not talking about that, but I do think it's important to talk about because I took a step back, but I also somehow ended up, I spend more money now, but it's more focused and more sustainable than just like, oh, I'm going to collect every Star Wars minifigure because, well, there's 1,500 of them at this point, and knowing myself that wasn't going to be sustainable. So if I had continued down the road I was going down, it would have been, I would be spending way more money right now. So it doesn't have to be an ultimatum, is what I'm saying. And I think in
Hmm.
that conversation, I said, when I took my first step away to kind of reevaluate what I was doing, I had realized there was a couple different types of Lego users, Legoers, right? We'll say there's your mock builders, because at the time I was building mocks, and I mean like big city layout, and that was spending a couple $100s a week on pieces. Then there's your collectors who just want to get everything. Then there's your displayers, right? Then there's your custom build. I mean, there's a couple of different key segments. So I think it's important to identify what you enjoy from the hobby. And if it's a little bit of everything, that's fine. Just know it's going to be a little bit of everything, not a lot of bit of everything, unless you can somehow turn this into a job and have the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
So I did set up some points here on the, kind of conversation here. So, ways to curate your collection. So the first point that I had that I wanted to talk about with you, West, was understanding yourself and setting boundaries. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, I think if I were to come up with like a checklist for this, I think the first step I would say is identify the themes that are important to
Right.
you, right? And then identify, list those out, and then probably pick two or three of them that you can really focus on.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's important. And I think that's kind of what you're getting at with understand yourself and set boundaries, right? So
Yeah.
and that could be boundaries within a theme, right? And we'll talk about that a
Yep.
little bit later. But I think that's a really important first step. And that's one of those things that you can reevaluate over time. Or that
Absolutely.
doesn't mean you can't buy outside of those themes. It's just saying, like, hey, recognize that you have said, I will make a commitment to the, like, if collecting, like you said, because and I think you have the mock builders, you have the city builders, you have the collectors who just leave things sort of on a shelf untouched. You have the people who throw it into a pile with the rest of the crap and just kind of
Here it
leave it and
is.
let it go. Yeah. So like, there's certainly different types of people who engage with Lego in different ways, and so I think that's okay too. So that's another thing you need to do is not only like identify the themes that you value within Lego, but also understand like what is it that you intend to get out of this relationship,
Yeah.
right? Like, do you like the feeling of building a set and how you can kind of turn your brain off and sort of that meditative state you find yourself in when building? And is that your relationship? Because if it is, then it really doesn't matter what theme you buy, right?
Right.
In this case, it's probably like a certain size of set that really speaks to you. Certainly, a theme is important, but and it's something you enjoy. But if you're after the chase, then it doesn't matter if it's Friends or if it's City or Star Wars or Disney or whatever. You can kind of build it however you want.
Yeah.
Um,
So I will
and so I think
say,
that's important.
too, I didn't have it on my note, but I think the first step of all of this, even though Pirate Smalls was saying, financials aside, I think the first step is understanding your financial boundaries, or what, and boundaries doesn't mean you're necessarily limitations. It just means what you are setting as a Lego budget, right? And it can either be determined, forced, or whatever. But
Yeah.
that's really important, because if it's just going to be, hey, I just want to get one or two sets a year, then guess what? You better pick that one or two set that you like the most that year.
Yeah. I think setting a budget's important. I don't know if I would say it's maybe the first step, but I think it's probably one of the first steps
Correct.
that
Yeah.
needs to
Yeah.
occur. Like, I think it's important to occur earlier in the process because that certainly then informs how you approach the themes you're
Sure.
collecting, right? Like if you're like, well, I only want to spend $100 a month, for example, maybe Lego Creator Icons or Lego Icons is not the theme for you to be saying, this is the theme I'm going to exclusively collect, because you're not going to be able to afford everything in that theme. Like, and
Yeah.
so I think that's, it's just one of those things of like being realistic of like, okay, well, like I can realistically spend $100 a month on Lego and feel okay about that. I mean, that's a lot of little $25 to $30 Lego City sets or Speed
Right.
Champion sets versus one larger Star Wars set, for example.
Right.
So that's just it's what you have to decide on and kind of be okay with.
Well,
But
and the
anyways,
the reason I suggested doing it first is because I really want to hit home the idea of always reevaluating. And
mhm,
and the reason I say do it first is because if you walk into the idea of, okay, I'm going to spend $300 a month on Lego, and then you quickly decide that might be a little too much. Maybe I don't need to do that after you start doing it. And then I think you reevaluate that budget process. Or you're like, man, I really want to collect Star Wars. I'm going to spend $100 a month. And you're like, I can't buy anything. All the stuff I want is retired and
mhm,
$1,000. Like, then at that point, if the money that you set aside to yourself in the beginning was, I'm going to spend $1,000 a month or $100 a month on this, and all of a sudden you're spending $1,000 a month, I think it's a really good time to reevaluate. Like, is that what I want to do?
yeah. And I think it's important to like certainly there's some ways that you can justify purchases and maybe justify exceeding a monthly limitation, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're doing that like every month, then it's not really a limitation at that point. And so again, like you said, that's the time that you should be reevaluating how you're approaching the
Right.
hobby because clearly the boundaries you have set are not boundaries that you're adhering to.
Yeah.
And I know this is so much easier to talk about setting boundaries than it is to actually like enforce them.
I have
So
a
I'd like to
budget.
acknowledge that up front that like we can sit here all day and talk about like being disciplined with this stuff, but then it's a whole nother game to
Actually
actually
doing it. And then
be disciplined.
Barradur drops after you hit your monthly budget, and you're like, well, I gotta get that gift with purchase, so I'm gonna make an exception here.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, what other steps did you have for curating your collection?
So I think with this conversation, we talked about there's different types of Lego users and understanding
Hmm.
who you are. We're under the influence right now that you're a collector, right? Or we're assuming that you're a collector because you're curating a collection. If you're a mock builder, you don't really have much to curate. If you're a city builder, you
Yeah,
curate your city, but we're
I
we're strictly talking about curating a
yeah,
collection here.
I do think it's important to acknowledge though that I think there's two different types of collectors, right? I think you have your serious collectors,
Yep.
and then you have like I think you can still be a mock builder and a
Sure.
collector to some extent
Yeah.
because like I think everyone ultimately is collecting Lego, right? Maybe and this is where like curating and collecting kind of separates a little bit, but
Collecting in the
so
sense
just
of,
to
of
clarify,
of acquiring, curating in the sense of
right,
maintaining.
or collecting with a purpose, right?
Right.
Like, um, so
Strategic collecting.
right, which again, I think in some sense, collecting it's kind of a weird scale that's not like a binary one or zero
Mm-hmm.
situation, but I know in the context of our conversation, we're referencing or talking about somebody who is curating, right? So you're collecting, like you said, with a purpose, strategically collecting sets, not just finding something on the shelf one day and pulling it. Although I'm sure both of us are sometimes
Uh,
um,
what?
have done that in the past. So, but
I
anyways, let's keep talking about. I think the next thing you had was
Yeah.
setting rules or expectations.
Well, I think to going just taking one step back real quick, understanding the type of collector that you are, right? After you did, or am I a collector? Yes. Like I, for example, am a completionist. I'm that crazy person that likes to have every version of a minifigure, and I like to display them next to each other because I like seeing the evolution of minifigures over time. And I know that about myself, which is why I steer clear of Star Wars. That is a rabbit hole I do not want to go down because of that. Because then,
Yeah.
I have an employee gift for Star Wars, but the exclusive, hard to get stuff is exclusive and hard to get. And I'm not saying it's not for other themes, but I'd prefer to have a shelf of all the Lone Ranger sets, for example, shelf or two of all those so I can see all of them versus having just part of Star Wars. So Understand who you are and the collector that you want to be is really important. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
the next thing that I have, like you were saying, is establishing some rules. So, for example, I don't collect Star Wars. But then establish some exceptions to the rules because I do really like Star Wars. And I say establish the exceptions because I find if you're just, taking a huff of copium and, like, oh, I'm just going to get this one set. And then you're like, it's okay because it's just this one set. If you don't establish that it's okay to delve into some of these. It's like you said, it's not binary. It's not ones and zeros. There can be some exceptions. So I recently started collecting the Star Wars diorama and the MIDI scale ships because I was super
Hmm.
interested in those, and it's kind of given me my Star Wars itch. We'll get into it in a little bit, but also like when it comes to Nintendo. Um, Started buying those Super Mario sets, didn't really care for them, and then they started coming out with like that one more adult themed Nintendo set, the Super NES, the Mighty Bowser, the Piranha Plant, and I'm like, well, those are really
Hmm.
cool. So I'm not a Nintendo collector, but I am going to collect those one-off sets that they release one of a year. So, and that was an exception I established, and I've kind of I say establish an exception because if you tell yourself up front, it's okay to go do this, you set your own expectation of like, I may buy a Star Wars set here or there, but that doesn't mean I'm going to start collecting Star Wars. That just means I'm going to
Yeah.
have, that one or two kind of offset that I do get, and that's okay. The 25th anniversary, as an example, the ones with minifigures, I'm collecting. Um, because I did that with the 20th anniversary, and that's how I get my Star Wars fix now, um, and I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah. I think all of those are good. And I don't really have anything to add to that in terms of like setting those boundaries or anything like that. I do like the idea of being a little forgiving to yourself by setting those exceptions, right? Or at
Mm-hmm.
least acknowledging that exceptions can exist. Because I think, part of this is being like Pirate Smalls suggested, to, approaching this from the perspective of like, hey, I enjoy this hobby. I don't make, $1 million a year to spend on Lego. So at some point I can be spending too much.
Right.
How do I spend or engage in this hobby in a way that allows me to continue to find joy in the hobby while at the same time gives me something to return to, right? Which I think is
Mm-hmm.
important and uh, is ultimately like okay for me in the long run, where I'm not going to look back in 10 years and go, I just spent $20,000 on Lego over a 10-year period. I could have put that into a savings account for my daughter or something,
Yeah.
or like feel like you are doing harm by engaging in this hobby.
Right.
And that's, I think, a tough balance to strike because, like we talked about, just the build could be meditative. So is that worth $40 to you? $60, $80? If you needed a few hours of like meditative, relaxing time and you had $100 to spend, you could go and get a massage. You could go and watch a movie at the movie theater, go to a concert. So there's like other choices, right? I know this kind of gets into like bare bone economics, but this is the study of how we approach decisions with limited resources.
Right.
And one of those resources for us is time and money, and Lego itself is a limited resource, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important for us to approach it from all of those perspectives. You write new versus used. What do you mean by that in terms of collection curation?
Yeah. So I guess we're gonna get personal again. My wife and I are looking at starting a family, and I'm trying to make my Lego dollars that I have budgeted just go a little bit further.
Hmm.
And when I first started collecting, I strictly would buy it in box. And I've
Yeah.
started to, and I kind of mentioned this last week too, I started branching out into more of the used category because I noticed, I bought one or two used sets of just really hard to find sets. But it was actually Ninjago City. I could have bought it new for like $1,300 in the US, and I bought it used for like 700. And
Yeah.
I built the thing, and I don't look at it any differently on the shelf. Now, if I was going to keep it in the box, obviously you have to buy it new, right? But that's not the type of collector I am. I don't collect the box. I like to build my sets, display them, and collect them that way. So for me, yes, the building experience wasn't necessarily 100% the same. The stickers were already applied. I bought it from a seller who said that they applied the stickers really, really well. They were a highly reputable seller, right? I probably spent a little bit more on a used one with those details than I would have on one without those details.
Yeah.
Um, and now I look at it on the shelf, it looks like brand new. It looks just like I built it. I can't tell if I built it new or used or not. It's just my set. And so
Yeah.
that made it so that instead of spending almost twice on that set, I was able to then take that money and spend it on something else. Um, so
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's a really good example of like it's okay to buy stuff used. Used doesn't mean bad, right? One other thing I've been enjoying recently is purchasing collections on Craigslist or something, and then just seeing what you find, and setting yourself a budget of like, okay, I'm not going to spend more than $300 on this collection or something, and then you kind of you might get burned here or there. It's more of like a good old booster pack for Magic the Gathering at that point, but I think it's fun, and then
Pokemon
and then
card.
I'll just resell the bulk stuff that I don't need, and get half my money
Yeah.
back or whatever. And I've got some cool
Every
sets
once
that
in a
way,
while,
and yeah,
yeah. Every once in a while, you're gonna find a holographic Charizard.
sure,
So
sure.
you know.
But I don't
No,
go
I
out
think
with
the
the
new
goal
versus
of doing
used.
that. You do it a little bit more
Yeah.
strategically than just blindly buying stuff. But
Yeah. I think the new versus used is a really kind of interesting distinction, and one that I think I'm sure a lot of Lego collectors ultimately face is that question of, do I need this thing used or new? And one of the nice features of Bricklink is the sellers, generally
mhm.
do a really great job of describing the condition of the set that they're selling, to include how used is it, how new is it. And I think that's a really nice thing that they do, but it also makes buying used stuff off of Bricklink a lot easier. And so then I think it's important to sort of separate, like, from a collection perspective, right? Like, what are you willing to buy new,
Right.
and what are you willing to buy used? And I think that's okay. And if it's something that you're going to play with, that's going to get sun, that's going to get, be left out, that's not going to necessarily be something you're putting in a case or a shelf somewhere and protecting, then like you said, you don't know any different now that you've built the set. And if there's a piece that's scratched or something, I know you have a considerable parts selection, like I
Mhm.
do too. Just go and grab one off the shelf that's like in better condition and throw it in
Yeah.
there. Like it solves that problem pretty quickly. And that's the funny thing too, right? Is like that's something that I've always thought is sort of interesting about Lego. I know we're on a tangent, and we'll talk about our collections here in a second. But you could take spare pieces if you had all the right spare pieces. You could assemble a Lego set, a licensed set, and basically sell it on Bricklink as a used set,
But I always
and
buy them
just
with
be
the
like,
instructions.
well, fair, and that certainly is a way to tell, like, if someone has done that.
If
But
I'm
like
buying
at the
used, I always make sure they come with the instructions.
fair, I'm not suggesting this as like a way of like defrauding anybody, because I will actually attest that, like, I've done that a few times on modulars of rebuilding them for my own collection, and they
Sure.
cost almost as much as buying the used set
Oh yeah.
does.
Almost
So
almost
like
more
it's
if you have to pay, depending on how much shipping you have to pay.
exactly, so it's not like you're making out here. I'm just saying, like, let's say you had a little car that you built, and it's the same exact thing as like something Lego offered in a city line or something a few years ago. Like,
Hmm.
nobody can tell the difference between pieces that you've just accumulated over time and the actual set, if they are in fact identical. Like, there's no way to tell any
Right.
difference. It's Lego. Like, and so I think that's one of the things too that's kind of interesting, is like, you see people who get like really antsy about like mixing stuff. I think you and I did that a little bit when we were younger. Like we were like, we can't mix this. Like even the extra pieces from our sets we kept in a bag with the instructions instead of like mixing them together and into like Gen Pop with the rest of like our Lego
Yeah.
pieces. And it's just like, what are those doing? Like it's just they're taking up room, they're getting scratched, they're doing, like it's nothing. There's nothing spectacular about a red 1x1 plate that's been left, as like an extra piece from a set. Like
Yeah.
it's. So it's just interesting to see how that plays out.
I
But
think
let's talk about.
for an
Sorry.
example here of why new
Yeah.
versus used can be important is the Lego Western sets. Those sets are
Mhm.
desirable and they're also rare because they're pretty old at this point. They're in the 90s. So buying a Fort Legorado is going to cost you $1,500. So
Yeah.
I bought one used and it was missing a handful of pieces. I think I might have spent $50 on
Hmm.
pieces to get it up to speed. And but it looks brand new now. I got a whole new, actually, okay, $100 because I also bought the sticker sheet,
Yeah.
which I did not apply. In case I ever resell it, I'll sell it with a brand new sticker sheet and get more for it that way because that sticker sheet's super rare now. But I bought that set and I was able to buy all of the Western series used, all
Hmm.
of it, every single one that I wanted. Well, and I wanted them all, and I got them all. Or I could have bought Fort Legorado new in box. So instead of buying one set, I bought 10. And
Yeah.
so it's okay to buy a set used, is what I'm saying. Find a good seller. When I bought Ninjago City, the guy had literally repackaged it into the bags that it was built in. So that I built it in order from the instructions. I opened bag one of this. It was a Ziploc bag, like labeled bag one. I opened bag one and that had all the pieces for first step. I opened bag two. It was
Nice.
exactly, and you bet I starred that seller on Bricklink. And if there's ever a use set I need, I'm getting it from him. I just got back and I just got into the Star Wars dioramas. I bought all the dioramas new or used because they're recently retired. I was able to get them for like $20 off of retail, and if buying them new would have been about 20% more than retail at this point. So again,
Hmm.
there's strategic ways to add to your collection and curate your collection. And Lego, the beautiful part about Lego is you can always replace a piece if it's missing or if it's damaged. So it takes you a little
Yep.
bit longer, a little bit more time actually going through it, checking the pieces, making sure, hey, oh shit, this one's been bit, put that aside. I go down to my part collection, I replace it. I wouldn't know the difference. So
Right.
there are a couple things I'll do while we're on the topic. I really try to stay clear from the quote unquote 99%. If you're too lazy to guarantee that every piece is in that set, I'm going to not buy from you. That's just my standards. Sorry, I understand your argument of, well, I don't want to say it's 100% complete because then if something's missing, you can get mad at me. Um, I don't give a crap. Make sure it's 100% complete if I'm going to take the time to buy it from you at that price. And then I
I
always make
love.
sure there's instructions too.
Yeah, I always love the sellers who are like complete, no minifigures, and you're like, well, that's not complete.
Yeah.
Like I know what they're saying, but it's just like,
Yep. So never
okay.
assume just because it says, well, if it if it doesn't specify that there's no minifigures and says complete, it's almost always like nobody's ever going to say a set's complete. Um, they'll never say, oh, it's complete, and then not send the minifigures. So they will
Yeah.
specify that at least. But yeah, that's always my complete, 100% complete. You're taking the time to say 100% complete, which is not because the minifigures go into the piece count. So,
Yeah.
but that's just the new versus used conversation. So, West, how do you curate your collection?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I definitely have a bit of a scaled down collection compared to yours. But the sets that I would say don't make any exceptions for are pretty limited. So the sets that I have curated that I collect or have as a collection, I have the complete Star Wars Rogue One collection. and or collection, which is just one set.
Wow,
And so I know
100%.
a few weeks ago we had talked about the new Sith Infiltrator with the Saw Gerrera character, so I will pick up the Sith Infiltrator to get Saw
So
Gerrera.
that's an exception that you've made to your curation.
It's an exception, but the Saw Gerrera figure is part of the Rogue
Right.
One and or like umbrella, and so I suppose I would call that an exception, yeah, to how I would approach that collection. Because if they come out with more Rogue One sets, I will buy them. If they
Right.
come out with more Andor sets, I will buy them, like without hesitation or pause. I have not bought. I'm trying to think if I've bought a Star Wars set since then. I believe the answer is no. I have not bought a Star Wars set since Andor, which I am okay with
No
right now.
if, and, or buts.
Yeah,
You only collect
and
Andor.
yeah, exactly. I'm okay with that because there's Star Wars right now is just kind of meh, but also that's the line that I've said, hey, this is
Yeah.
what I want to collect, and
Setting
then this is
boundaries.
everything else is okay. The other ones that I do that with are the modulars. So I'm a huge fan of the modular buildings. I love building them.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a small city that I have been working on that is now packed away, which is tough, honestly. It's tough to build, like you mentioned. That takes a lot of time and money and everything else. I don't really have roads in it right now. Even just putting things on mill plates is expensive, although I highly recommend it for the modular buildings because they get way less flimsy. And so
Yeah.
mill plates are definitely nice, even just for displaying the modular buildings. But so like I buy the modular buildings. I bought the Daily Bugle. I did not buy um, the
Avengers Tower, Sanctum
Avengers
Sanctorum.
Tower or the Sanctum Sanctorum. They're both nice sets. Daily Bugle was good. It was a fun set to buy. I don't think I need any more Avengers big modular building sets this year, or probably ever. Sanctum Sanctorum looks great, but it just isn't what I want it to be in a building. I would need to modify it to make it what I would want. So,
How dare you?
I know.
How dare you?
And so I think, it's understanding that, right? Because like it'd be really easy to say like, well, those are modular buildings, so like they can fit. And it's like, yeah, they are modular buildings, but like if I don't like the Sanctum Sanctorum for the fact that it's a Doctor Strange set, I like it because I like the style of building.
The old
So
what's that
it's
called?
almost like a
The
French
barrio, the
style.
barrio kind of New York barrio.
No, I think it's definitely like a French almost. I wouldn't even call it neoclassical. I'd have to probably look up the specifics with architecture of like what style that's in, but it
Mm-hmm.
has something called a mansard roof, which is that upper floor where it's part of the roof, but then
Sure.
is actually a floor itself. And it's a very French technique that the United States has used in a lot of our own architecture here. It looks really great. It looks like it would go wonderful in a city and fits with the modular line that is both European and American. And so in its influences. So I think that would look wonderful. I haven't bought the museum yet. I still need to. So that's one of the ones this year that I'm like, oh, I know I'm going to buy this set. But those are really the only like major sets that I buy and collect. I had the 20th anniversary sets from Star Wars. I'm not going to buy the 25th ones. I'll buy some city sets every once in a while if I feel like I could use that in my modular city.
Mm-hmm.
For example, the new cranes and excavator that's coming out this year, the bucket loader, I'm really excited for. But I've also kind of been burnt with some of those city sets in the past, and so I will probably stay away from them.
So
I
you curate your collection more based off of applying it to your city.
I that would be the one way, right? If it's not Rogue One, then it's I curate a collection, yeah, based on how it could be integrated into like a modular style city. The last thing I'll say, the only other collection that I truly collect is the Lego Winter Village
Mm-hmm.
sets, and I know you collect those as well.
Yeah.
So, and in terms of collections, I really like that one because, yeah, to drop $100, around the holidays for a Lego set isn't like a ton. So that's pretty doable for me, at least. And so I don't mind that, right? I don't get fatigued with that. Whereas, I think you could get easily fatigued with other sets.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I do those. I like the trains. I don't collect all of the trains. I got the Orient Express, but I didn't get any of the new Hogwarts
Hmm.
Expresses. I didn't get any of the new city trains that came out. Um, I'm I have my own opinions about that I shared in the trains video, and I'll continue to share on this channel. But yeah, that's how I curate my
Yeah.
sets. And then I do sometimes I'll just buy something that's interesting, but I think I've talked about it here. Like there's sets that I think are wonderful that I have no intention of ever buying. That I would buy if I could buy, but I don't need them. So I'm okay with that, right? I think the one sets that I might make an exception for are the Lord of the Rings ones. I keep kind of waffling on them, but fortunately the price is high enough that it's enough to kind of keep me away.
Oh man, dude, I'm so
So
glad I completed. So I got some of them in my dark, like when I was still in my dark age, and then
yeah,
I like it was like 2017. I was like, I really need to get these now. And I remember back then I was like, holy crap, they're expensive.
yeah,
But I found a good deal. Like somebody on eBay was just, I'm sure if they look back at what I bought them for now, they'd be like, ugh. I'm talking about like Mines of Moria for like 120 bucks. And like, I don't
yeah.
think you can find it for like under 200 now. Two
But
or
Grinch,
even
what?
three.
Yeah, talk to us about how you curate your collection.
So I'm a little more of a plastic addict, a little further off the deep end than I'd say West is. But I'm actually what I feel like I'm in a really good position with my Lego collection, and I shared that kind of personal detail earlier, and so I really feel like within this next year I'll be in a place with my collection where I will no longer be buying retired sets, with the
Mhm.
exception of the of modulars. Um, which I'm really only missing, I think, five at this point, but they're the expensive ones. But the place, so um, I would define my curation as a um, licensed theme and sub-series collector. For example, I talked about Nintendo. The other exception I have to a collection is I don't really collect Ninjago. I do collect the Ninjago City line. So I've got the docks, I've got the markets, I've got the gardens, I've got the
Mhm.
Ninjago City, but I don't collect Ninjago. Um, but I do like having all the kind of one-offs themes. So like when Lego Avatar, um, the Way of Water sets came out, and the original Avatar Blue People, um, I bought those sets because I really like the one-off license. So the
Yeah.
current collection I'm working on right now is the Lone Ranger. I've got like two more sets, and then for Indiana Jones, those sets are wildly expensive as well, like Lord of the Rings status, and the sets themselves aren't that good. I bought a couple. I was starting to get into that realm, but I've decided to just strictly get one of each minifigure. So that was an exception I made, and I'm just gonna have the new sets that they've released on display next to the old minifigure collection. I just don't care too much for the sets. The IP I'm so on, but I like to collect the licensed sets, and gotta have Indiana Jones, right? Um, the other sets that I'm missing, two of that are retired, are the two original, or one original of the Chinese New Year sets, and then the garden, the Chinese New Year garden, the Tranquil Garden. Then I'll have all those. And then I've decided I'm going to get that Imperial flagship. But those are the last retired sets I have, and then going forward, I'll be in a spot where I'm no longer buying really any retired sets, with the exception of the modulars here and there. Because
Yeah.
at this point, my collection's pretty big, and um, I really don't need to be just. I've got. I've been doing this for a while now. I've gotten those key sets that I want. At this point, I'm making excuses to go buy a retired line versus actually like I think Indiana Jones is kind of borderline for me of like
Yeah.
wanting the retired line or not. That's why I'm like, well, the minifigures are super cool. I like the characters, but I don't need to go and spend, $600 on the set. The exception that I will make is sometimes you can find the set if, let's say, it has 5 exclusive minifigures to that set, like a lot of the Indiana Jones do. You can sometimes find the set new, sealed for the same amount as all the minifigures new. So
Hmm.
sometimes I will go down that route, and that's an exception I'm willing to make if the math works out. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so for me, really like those kind of one-off sets. But then at this point, I'll really be in a position where I'll only be collecting new Lego sets going forward, as I try to really not pare back my Lego spending, but what I'll say is adhering to the actual budget that I've set out and following that, um,
Yeah.
which is a X number of dollars a month or one Lego set is how I have it set up, because occasionally you get a Baradur that comes out and you can't actually buy that if you adhere to your budget. So I've made the exception
Yeah.
of like there's a one limit of a set, so it can either be up to a certain amount or a single set, and that's how I budget it. Because the budget that I set for myself is more of just a, I don't necessarily want to be spending that much on Lego. It's not that I
Yeah.
can't; it's that I've got other stuff that I want to do in life. For example, I'd love to get a beach house someday. I would love to buy my wife a horse. Told her I'd do that, so got to do it now. Um, but I also want to, right? My whole life is not Lego. So that's where I'm at with my kind of collection journey. I talked a little bit about the exceptions that I made. My rules are I like to collect complete series. So
Hmm.
if I'm not willing to buy them all, I'm not willing to buy one. So for example, I collected all the Pirates of the Caribbean sets. I've collected all of the Lone Ranger sets. I've collected all the Avatar sets. I've collected all the sub series of Ninjago City sets. Right, I've set that exception. I set that rule. It's my collection. I can set the rules that I want, but I try to define it. Define it the best way that I can, and I think I'm a completionist collector. And the nice
But you
part,
also,
yeah,
I was gonna say, I mean, you set some boundaries, so like I don't
yeah.
think you're, yeah,
No, I think part of the reason some people feel like Lego's so expensive is because I feel like when I got back into Lego, the AFOLs around that time were any of the big sets that would come out, they'd buy. And now all of a
yeah,
sudden it's like, well, do I need a $200 Simba? Do I need a $250 Little Mermaid set, a $300 Hocus Pocus set? I did get that set for my wife, full disclosure,
yeah,
she loved it. But do you need all those sets? Whereas before you might have bought the Tower Bridge because it was the $250 creator expert set that came out that year, and that's the one
yeah,
it was cool to get, right? Like that was your Lego experience. That's all you got really, in that
right,
range. Whereas now it's like there's a couple of $200 sets every single month that are being released. Um, so yeah, that's how I curate. That those are kind of the rules that I set. Going forward, after this year, when I reestablish my budget, the rule will be, a certain amount of money each month or one Lego set, with the exception of a Black Friday set that were to come out that like was announced within the month, and if there's a cool promo that I want with it, and then I'll allow myself to get 2 retired sets a year,
yeah.
and that's going to be how I
So,
track and manage my budget. And
Grinch,
yeah.
I have a question for you. You have some other collections that you didn't mention, and we don't have to go over them for the
Yeah.
episode, but
No, let's talk about them.
would you ever sell those one or any of those collections?
I think at this point, so part of the reason, so I always cringe when you say you modify your sets, and it's more of a troll. It doesn't actually, I mean, look, you can do whatever you want with your Lego sets. I collect Lego a certain way, you collect Lego a certain way. That's all that matters. I like to just roll my eyes at you because you always say like, "Oh, I modified it." I'm like, more for fun and banter versus anything else. But yeah, so I like to keep my collection in pristine condition, so I will make sure that I have this instructions in good condition. If you haven't seen my video on how I organize my instructions, I'd recommend it. I
Hmm.
have the whole set aside. It's either in a bag, set aside, or if I just have part of the set on display, then I'll have, that other part of the set, in a set aside. When I first started collecting, I would part out sets. In fact, I parted out all my Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom sets, and then I ended up rebuilding them, and it took a really long time. And I was like, okay, no more parting out. I took off stickers and I damaged stickers, and then I was like, well, wait, I want to build these sets again. So I learned that the hard way. I had to rebuy all these sticker sheets. So luckily, it's just Jurassic World where those sticker sheets weren't super expensive.
Yeah.
But that was, kind of my lesson of like just keep it aside. So if I ever do want to sell anything, the instructions are pristine. All the pieces are mostly there, so it's just an inventory check versus I've got to go dig through a box to find the set because that takes a really long time. But as of right now, no, I don't have any plans on selling anything. I'm sitting on some of the Star Wars stuff when I went off my deep end. For example, I've got the employee gift. I mean, every time I check that thing, it's more expensive. So I'm like, I don't need the money right now. I might as well just sit on it, and cash out one
Yeah.
day. And, maybe use it as a way to like, for me, if I'm ever going to sell my collection one day, I would use those pieces as ways to like get somebody's attention to like the bigger collection, right? Of like, hey, come through the door. Look what all I've got. Look at this post of
Yeah.
like, come check out my collection and buy it because I've got the exclusive employee X-wing Christmas gift. I've got
Mhm.
all the Comic-Con figures. So no, as of right now, I would not sell anything.
Nice.
All right, so West, before we move on with the conversation, was there anything else that you wanted to add to curating your collection or curating collections in general?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of share another anecdote of how I've kind of adjusted my own collection over time. And like I said, just like Pirate Smalls kind of suggested, as he was moving, or they were moving, and looking back on their own collection, and sort of saying like, man, what have I, Anakin
What have I
Skywalker, what have
done?
I done?
Do you have a bunch of decapitated minifigures or something? I collect
No,
headless
I just,
minifigures and I display them in my
yeah.
house. And wait, what?
So like I collected a lot of the six wide speed champions for a little bit. I started collecting in 2019. I was on a business trip. I really enjoyed building them because they were small sets. They were easy to build at night, and it was kind of just a great way to like unwind from the day and build a little Lego set, and that was really fun. And then I was like, well, I'll put them in my Winter Village because the Winter Village like vehicles were six wide, and I was like, if I'm gonna have a Winter Village, like they will drive, like Porsches and stuff, because why not?
Because it's like in
It's my Winter
Vale.
Village.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I started buying them, and then they went to six or eight wide and on Speed Champions, and I was like, oh well, these will be great for the city
Mm-hmm.
because like they look great, and I I do keep some of them for the city, like I truly do, and I like all of the sets, but there are some that I like them ready to part out. I have parted out the Lotus. I will probably part out a few other ones that we just don't need to, or that just don't fit the style and the city very well. And so I I think looking back on it, like I'm packing away these sets that I'm like, my intent here is to part them out with like not a, I mean, yes, you can rebuild some. Like I
Yeah.
built a black Ford GT using the current Ford GT instructions. So I just built it in black with pieces I had, and it looks really cool. But you're not going to do that for every single car in your inventory. It's not that simple sometimes. I guess the point I'm getting at is like I think I realized like in some cases I was buying sets to buy sets and
Yeah.
not because I necessarily needed them, or it's like going to the pick a brick wall and you're like you stare at this one piece and you're like, man, I could use 70 baguettes for my city because that would be awesome.
True
This is a true
story.
story. And then you're sitting there at home and you're like, why do I have 70 Lego baguettes?
You have 5 Acro Mill containers full of
Uh,
baguettes.
yeah, and it's just like what was I thinking when I picked these up? And so I think it's just important to
Yeah,
to be to collect and shop with a little more intention because it is very easy to get frustrated over past decisions and choices and so I think that's helpful, and I think this is a process that both you and I will continue to evaluate and
sure.
reevaluate over time, and that's okay. That I think is a very healthy approach to this hobby. So I hope our discussion today helps other people too as they uh, think about collecting
Hmm.
or
How they
are
collect.
reevaluating their own collections.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Um,
cool.
so we talked, we can't talk about curating a collection without like buying Lego. So I just wanted to quickly share. We don't have to talk about it for too long, but just some of the areas and tools that I use for buying and selling retired Lego. eBay is a really good one. I found that eBay versus Bricklink is sometimes better for new sets because you have like just Joe Schmo selling a one-off set, whereas Bricklink you have somebody that actually owns a store. Not always true. Um, some tips for safety there is always use PayPal because if you buy a set and it's not as
Mm,
advertised, then you can open up a claim. And I've had to do that one time before. Somebody actually that was on Bricklink. Somebody accused me of damaging their minifigure and I was like, the hell you don't. And I got my money back. But eBay is good. Just what my tip there is always check the description. Number one, always check for the seller's
yeah.
feedback. Number two, and then number three, I only buy a Lego set that has the Lego set number in it, and that says Lego. If it says
Mm,
Lego compatible, stay clear. But if it has Lego set, 71582. Oh my gosh, I don't even know what set that is. I wonder what that is. 75182. Republic fighter tank. I knew it'd be Star Wars. Um, so if I buy that set, it's got to have 75182 in it because that way, if I get a fake set that's not
oh, I have that set.
75, yeah, you do. If I have a fake set that isn't that set, I have cause to now open a claim and say this was not as advertised because it didn't say
Yeah.
Republic Fighter Tank like Lego. It said Lego set 71582, and that is not what this is. Um,
Yeah. And I think eBay of all the suggestions is probably the most rife with potential to
for
not
sure.
necessarily guarantee, right? But you do open yourself up to
Scam.
potentially fraudulent
Hmm.
purchases a little bit more than like Bricklink or mini bricks and minifigs or something like that, where especially with bricks and minifigs, you can inspect something in
Yeah.
person. So
And the
yeah.
one thing, so then there's Brickset is a good tool for curating your collection. I have my collection inventoried on Brickset. They also give you a value, which is a little bit hit or miss. If you really want a true value, I would say you got to do that work on your own. Um, the one tool that I've been using a lot of, which is a little bit more of the Wild West, is the Reddit Lego Market. The reason I do that
Mm,
is because it seems to be the cheapest place to buy Lego because usually people are pricing under Bricklink, under eBay because why would I use Reddit if I'm not getting a deal on it? It's more of a peer-to-peer
yeah.
thing. There's some rules on the subreddit to keep safety. I've never had an issue on there. It's pretty under the radar. Scammers get shut down pretty darn quick. So again, always use PayPal to protect yourself there. But I have found some. I mean, just the other day I called West and I said, "Hey, do you want Ninjago City?" Because I just found one used for $500 on Reddit Lego Market, and this thing's going to be gone. And the next hour, somebody had already replied and wanted it. But you can just
Yeah.
find some really really good deals there, and it's not like the Lego raffle Reddit. It's you're just buying and selling sets. Um,
Hmm.
Economy is good, but that's more for Lego investing. And then, of course, if you like a storefront, bricks and minifigures is great. I've been, will say though, couple times I've bought in minifigures from bricks and minifigures, and they're cracked. They don't advertise them as new versus used there. They advertise them as is. Same thing with the sets on their back display wall. Those are as
Yeah.
is. So make sure if you're buying one of those sets on the display wall that you're not paying average used price for it. You shouldn't be, because it might not have every single piece. It's being sold as is. And then always inspect the minifigures before you buy them. And if I've had one time where they didn't let me, and the guy was offended that I was looking at it. This was in Portland. I don't know if you remember that. And I'm like, I just want to check for cracks because I've checked 2 or 3 of these before and they've had cracks on them. Can you check for me? And the guy's like, I can promise you. We go through a detailed process. Oh, and I was like, what? Is there a crack? And he's like, yeah, there's 2 actually. And I'm like, okay. So my suggestion is only buy it if they let you examine it. Number one, I mean, you
Yeah.
are in most cases paying a premium at Bricks and Minifigure, and the premium that you get from that service
Yeah.
is being able to see the dang thing before you buy it. See it.
It's
Put your hands on it.
they know what they're selling.
Right.
They price the stuff based off of like brick economy or brick set. So
Right.
it's not a case of like you go to Bricks and Minifig and you're buying stuff like at 40 or 50% off, And if they're collectible minifigures, for example, not CMFs, but actually like collectible minifigures, you could be spending 20, 30, 40, $50 on a minifigure.
Yeah.
Like the least that they can do is let you look at it. I mean, it's not like too that they're kept in like UV protected cases or anything. Like there's not like a vault where they have to like open up the safe and pull out the Padme from the Gungan submarine set, right? Like she's out there on display.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that's totally valid. I did have one to add to your list,
Yeah.
Grinch,
Go ahead.
for our listeners. This is one actually, I'll be fully honest, I've seen in advertisements on YouTube, and I just pulled up their website. But I did want to share this because Bricks and Minifigures are franchises, and I did read an article about a store opening up. I believe it was in Portland or Seattle, where you could just go in and you could build a set, and you basically like build the set there at the store, and then you turn it back to them. You could choose to buy it if you wanted to. It was effectively used because other people had built it. And so it's just like go to the store and get the experience. The other one
Like a
is
pick a
called
brick wall
Netbricks.
sort of thing?
Yeah, kind of. Although they were sets, so you could just pull a set off the shelf. Almost like, there's like board game bars where
Yeah.
it's like you go to the bar and you build a board game. It was kind of the same thing with Lego, where it was like you go to the place
Oh,
and
and you
you
build the set there,
build the
and
set
then you can
there,
buy
and
it.
then you can either
Huh.
buy it or give it back. Um,
How do they make money
but
on that?
another,
Like, do they have a
I don't
bar
know
or
if
something?
they charge you by like the hour, or like
Oh,
if there's
okay.
something, like an admission fee or something
Like
like
an
that,
arcade,
or
like put a token in to go build a set, and then
yeah, I don't know.
yeah.
That would be an interesting pricing model. The last one is a website called NetBricks, and we are not sponsored by NetBricks. We are not formally endorsing NetBricks. I just thought it was an interesting idea where you basically pay a subscription and they send you sets, you build them and you send them back, and it's you're not keeping the set, you're just building the set. And
Interesting.
so we talked about, as like builders, if you're someone who likes to build for sort of that meditative purpose, something like NetBricks might be right up your alley, where
Yeah.
you don't have to keep it on your shelf and be forced to stare at it for 6 months until you put it away. Like, you can just rent the set and
It's honestly
then
almost as
return it.
much as it's a little bit more than a Netflix like pro subscription. So like
Yeah,
building
it's like
unlimited
20
Lego
bucks a
sets a
month,
month
a little bit.
versus Netflix, like cool. 29 for the unlimited, 24 for the one-time rental.
Yeah. So I think that's a really interesting thing. And you pick, so like for example on this, right, it's for $29 a month plus shipping, you get one set at a time worth up to $100. The next set, it says ships upon return with a 2-month minimum. So you get the sample set that you want, you build it, you send it back, and then they send you another one. And you can sign up
Yeah.
for like bigger ones. So like the extra large sets, it costs $80 a month plus shipping, but you're building sets up to like, this is the Avengers helicarrier, this is the Lego
Yeah.
Death Star. Um,
Man,
so
I was feeling bad
yeah.
about my Lego budget and I saw the price for this and I'm like, it's in a good spot.
So, anyways, I think that's a really interesting idea of reusing Lego sets. The other thing too, right, is like talk to your friends, talk to your buddies. I have a friend here in town who likes to build sets, but he doesn't have much of a purpose for the sets after he builds them. And every once in a while, I'll buy them from him. So,
Nice.
like used, but like I
Oh,
know who he is. I know he takes care of them. So,
dude, I wish I had
um,
friends. That'd be great. Like, but can I buy your Lego sets at 30% retail?
but yeah, I mean, he kind of knows what he's doing, and it's sort of like a fair like exchange of
Yeah.
sets. So, anyways, it's not a bad run there. You can go to your brick fairs, your brick cons, and buy and sell stuff there too. That's a great way
Hmm.
to do business or explore that as well. So, yeah, lots of ways to purchase Lego sets and kind of continue to engage with the hobby. So,
Awesome. Yeah. Um, One more tip to kind of keep you honest as a Lego collector. One tool that I really like to do is I just set up a Bricklink wanted list with all the sets that I want. And you can do you can do what's called a price guide on your wanted sets. So you can add an
hmm,
average price guide. And I use that all the time. If you're ever shopping on Bricklink and you're at somebody's storefront, it'll say like, oh, the Imperial flagship, for example, its average price that's currently for sale is $700. And that way
hmm,
you can see, okay, this is $100 more, $100 less, maybe this isn't a good deal. But then you can also use that as a guide outside of Bricklink. So if you're ever at Bricks and Minifigure, if you're ever on Lego Market, you can just pull it up and be like, am I getting a good deal here? That's what I use as a guide. So
yeah,
a lot of tools here. So I like the addition of NetBricks. I actually, when I was doing my MBA, we had to invent a company, and I almost invented that same company, but for puzzles. And I found out it existed already. Um,
yeah.
but cool concept there. But let's wrap up with some final thoughts here. So I'll kind of close out with my thoughts, West, and then I'll send it back to you here for the final word. But I'd say get what you want ultimately when you're collecting, right? And set rules and set exceptions. And I don't mean set excuses. I mean set exceptions to the rules because they're bound to come up and it's better to get ahead of this stuff than it is to get lost in it a little bit while you're collecting, right? Because if you set rules, you know, it's okay to have exception to the rules, but you're identifying those ahead of time so that when that inevitably occurs, you don't just start going trigger happy with all these exceptions. You're like, well, I've got some exceptions and this really doesn't cover it. Like maybe I'll keep an eye on it, right? And I kind of
Yeah.
kept an eye on the dioramas for a while, and finally I decided to pull the trigger on them for that reason, right? It was like, well, I could just collect, I collect sub themes. Maybe I just do this for Star Wars, and I wasn't ready to bite the bullet, and I finally did. But that was an exception I had already established, so I was more comfortable doing it. Um,
Hmm.
Identify what you want, right, versus how you'll incorporate it into the larger collection. And I
Yeah.
think I'm saying this as feedback to West because you were talking about how you got burnt on some city sets. Well, you're like, oh, um, I'm just gonna put it in my Lego City. Like, was that an excuse to buy the set, or did you actually want the set, right? Or were you like, oh, I'll just put it in? So
Hmm.
I saw it was really ironic this morning. We knew this was going to be the topic. I woke up, I was on Lego Reddit, and somebody goes, my latest Lego excuse, and they had one of the new Space City sets, and it was like, I bought this $50 set for this one rock piece. If all you wanted, right? If you identified the want of that set, and it was, I want this rock piece, go buy it on Bricklink for $2 versus $50 for the brand new set, and then bam.
Yeah.
One thing I've started collecting are Lego animals. I do not collect the sets, I just collect the animals. Plain and simple. um, so yeah, identify what you want versus how you're trying to incorporate it, because that'll really help in a lot of these cases. And then tying that all together, you don't need to come up with an excuse to buy a set. The excuse should be that you want it. So if you're making
Yeah.
excuses, well, oh, I'll put this into my city. It, but do you
The number of times
do you
that
want
I
the
have,
set?
right. And sometimes it's a case of just like, sometimes you just got to build something,
Yeah,
and like I think that's okay too. But if that's the case, like I
mock build.
I think I was sharing this the other day of like I taking stuff apart is actually sometimes for me just as enjoyable as building. It's just that methodical aspect of like moving, not necessarily like not like turning your brain off, right? But it's like that meditative state that you find yourself in where
Yeah,
it's just like everything else is like on the side and you're just sitting there and you're just taking something apart piece by piece and or putting it together piece by piece, and that is really comforting. And so if that's like what how you are trying to engage in that, then yeah, maybe take something apart instead of building something. Maybe just, I mean, if you have to buy a set, you got to buy a set. Like I'm not gonna like say, you know, no, but like I think that's like you said, Grinch, of like where it's really smart to have kind of like a wanted list identified. Lego allows you to do that actually on their website to
hmm
build wanted lists. So, yeah, kind of have an idea of like what you want to go buy, and then if you see it, like go for it. So like I do that with like Target all the time, where I'll be like, if they have this Speed Champion set in there, then I'll go buy it. But if they don't, like I'm not gonna go buy something else. But like I said, I have a few sets that I could pick up that I wouldn't be disappointed about. So my chances of just grabbing something I want are a lot higher than, sort of being forced to get something or
yeah.
feeling forced to get it. So,
All right. Well, I think that about wraps up our conversation here on curating your Lego collection. The next conversation that we'll have along this line will be about how to display your Lego collection. We're going to give that a little bit of a rest. We're not going to talk about that next week. We'll have another episode next week. And then probably in a month or two, we'll bring back up the display conversation. This was really meant to be a follow on from the collection fatigue part of the discussion that we had last week. And I do feel like there'd be a little bit of overlap if we did all three of these back to back to back.
yeah,
But then also this way, it more importantly, selfishly, gives me the opportunity to get my Lego collection set up at my new house and gives me a little bit more time as we've been painting this week and I haven't had any opportunity to get any of my Lego out of boxes. So that way we can also do a follow-on video of my curated collection and how it's displayed to follow that episode. So that'll be on YouTube at some point in July. And we'll probably hit that episode about displaying in June. But TBD on all that. Just wanted to give the listeners a little bit of a heads up on what to come. But let's go ahead and press on to what are we building?
What are we building?
West, what are you building?
nothing.
Nothing. Bruh.
No, I don't have anything building right now, and that's okay. So, like I said, I've got some stuff
Yeah, you're busy
on
moving,
my wanted
selling a house,
wanted list right now.
living
Yeah,
life.
but um, that's okay. I'm sure if, like, for example, if I saw that BMW Speed Champion set in the store, I would have picked it up, but I didn't. So,
Right.
nope, I'm not building anything this week. So,
I finally
Grinch, how about you?
got all my May the 4th stuff showing up. I haven't
Okay.
built anything this week, but I did buy some Lego. I got the Marvel stuff. I hadn't bought in a lot of it yet from kind of this winter wave, the
Hmm.
January wave, and some of the stuff from last year I hadn't gotten yet just because um, been moving. It's on the cheaper side. I was just waiting for sales on some of it. So I got some of that order, like the Venomized Groot, for example. Um, and yeah, so I will be building some of that. Well, this week I'm going out of town for work, but in the near future here, probably maybe something tomorrow. I might build that indoor diorama tomorrow.
Ooh, yeah.
and that'll be pretty cool. And then yeah, so not a
Nice.
super been a super busy week, just not for Lego for me. But again, talking about collection fatigue, it's okay to take a break once a week from Lego. You don't have to do it every single day. Um,
Yeah,
so let
absolutely.
go ahead and move on to brick mail.
Brick mail.
All right, so for brick mail this week, we have a couple of comments here. I'll do the first one from Calvin W2104. I had a 15-year dark age before coming back to Lego. This is in response to the the collection fatigue. My girlfriend
Yeah,
bought me the old fishing store for my birthday, and I haven't looked back since. What a great set to get back into, by the way. That was
yeah.
like a
Nice
year or
job.
right around when I was getting out of my dark age too. Um, just from the relatively short time I've been back, I've definitely experienced some fatigue, especially with the number of larger sets that come out on an annual basis. We definitely talked about that today. I love bricks and minifigures mainly due to the opportunity to buy older retired sets, but you have to be really careful in buying from them. In my experience, most sets are priced at the used complete value, but in my experience, most of them are literally sold as they are buying. Yeah, so you're talking about how they're sold as is if they're out of the box, and they do price them as almost that used 100% complete price. So you do have to watch that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they mark them up, right? But they also they have to make a it's a business, so it makes
Yeah.
sense.
Well,
But
you're
I
not
think
paying
that's just
shipping. You're not paying shipping
right,
too. Yeah. Which
like
can be
buyer
expensive.
beware,
Yeah.
right?
But definitely
Yeah,
buyer beware. It's not a, they are also a business trying to make money. So they're also not doing
right.
charity necessarily. So just, make sure you can handle it, right? If you're buying an expensive set, for example, if you're buying the Emerald Knight, make sure it has those printed slopes that go on the side of the
Mm,
engine, because those can get expensive. And if it doesn't, they could just be dark green ones. Like just have an eye for those things. Know what you're trying to buy, so that you make
yeah,
sure you get what you're trying to buy, right? So, or if it's missing, if you're buying the Captain Rex speeder bike from back in the day that had the Phase 3 Captain Rex in it, that was so expensive for so long when it was essentially just a battle pack, know that it's so expensive because it came with Captain Rex, and don't spend $100 on it if it doesn't have Captain Rex.
yeah,
Probably $200 now. Um, but then he says some people might not care as much, but I definitely do. Oh, sorry. He says which means missing pieces and stickers most of the time. Some people might not care as much, but I definitely do. I want all my sets to be 100% complete, and that's exactly what we're talking about today. That is how you collect. That's how I collect too, Calvin. That's how you curate your collection. And we're not meaning necessarily to poo-poo bricks and minifigures. What we're talking about is when you walk in, they have a display case with minifigures, and then on the back wall, they have a wall of used Lego sets that are out of box and built. They
mm,
also have brand new in box used retire sets. Some of the times, or a lot of the times, it's kind of hit or miss on what you find when you go in there. And those sets are certainly brand new in box. It's not like you're going to have a bad experience with that. But what we're
yeah.
referring to is buying those used out of boxed sets that
Yep.
they have there.
So thank you, Calvin, for writing in. Our next comment was from your boy Taco
Taco.
2091, and he said, "I'm really excited for the jungle theme with Johnny Thunder. Do you think the pilot in the new sets is supposed to be the pilot from the original Adventures theme?" And I would not put that past Lego to kind of do a crossover like that. I'd have to take a look at them side by side, but I think their inclusion of Johnny Thunder probably isn't the only sort of crossover that they're doing back into these city themes. I
Mm-hmm.
got Johnny, or kind of the Johnny Thunder CMF a few years ago. Great figure. And so it's fun to see him reincorporated back into these sets, especially Grinch, you and I both. I don't think we collected Johnny Thunder so much, but that was kind of coming out when uh, pre Indiana Jones Lego came out. But there was certainly a very strong tie-in between Johnny Thunder and Indiana Jones. Johnny Thunder was basically just Lego Indiana Jones before Indiana Jones
Yeah.
became was a licensed uh, theme for Lego. So that was exciting to see them kind of back in these sets. I think Lego could really continue to cross over some of that stuff.
Yeah,
and I think that's definitely something that us older fans certainly appreciate.
sure, for sure.
But at the end of the day, I think that pilot minifigure could be whoever you want it to be. So
I think it's
if you want
supposed
it
to
to be,
be maybe a mild suggestion.
yeah,
I don't think
I'd have
it's
to go
a
look at them
yeah. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but just looking at him
side
here,
by side.
did he have an
Yeah,
orange beard? But I think it's supposed to like whereas Johnny Thunder is literally Johnny Thunder. I don't think this is literally the pilot, but I think it's supposed to maybe stylistically be a updated version of that, but not
yeah,
necessarily a updated version of Johnny Thunder. It's just supposed to be like if you were to have a pilot sidekick today, it would probably look like this, but not necessarily be that pilot sidekick.
Did um did he have a name? Like,
I
was he
don't
a
remember.
named character
We're gonna have to talk about Johnny
within?
Thunder, and we need to decide. Maybe somebody can answer in the comments when we do the theme review on Johnny Thunder. Do you want us to do all of Johnny Thunder at once? I would prefer personally to do each individual, like the Orient Expedition, the Dinosaur, and then the Egypt. I'd prefer to do them all separate. And I think was there a jungle one? No, yeah, and the jungle one. Um, I would prefer to do them all separate, but let us know in the comments. Would you like to see all of Johnny Thunder at once, or more of a history of Johnny Thunder himself, or maybe we do both. Maybe we do a history of Johnny Thunder as like within Lego and all the references and Lego sets and Johnny Thunder as a whole, and kind of talk about a higher level, and then go into the actual themes and more details. But that'll be the question of the week here. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at the figure now. Actually, he's a great minifigure. He's got his Hawaiian shirt on over or under his leather jacket. That's a lot of fun. So that's a neat little set. Not a little bad one. I'm not a huge fan of the airplane build, but I like the minifigures. Anyways,
All right. So thank you, ya boy Taco.
yeah.
And that is a wrap on another episode of AFOLs Welcome. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you are listening to this show. If you would like to write the podcast, please email us at afolswelcome@gmail.com or follow us on Instagram at afolswelcome. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you on the next one.
See you.
Bye.